This story occurred in Yongchun Village, Jidong Province, Jixi City, Heilongjiang Province. In the village, there was a gambler named Cao. Despite being in his 30s, he had no family because he was a gambler. That day, Cao went out early in the morning, and his old blind mother knew he was gambling again, so she tried to advise her son to give up, find a soulmate, and then build a family in order to have a decent life. But he refused to be obedient to stay at home, instead rushing out the gate without even looking back, leaving the old mother sighing behind. After leaving the house, Cao went straight to Mr. Li's house at the end of the village to the east, because Mr. Li's family owned a gambling establishment in this village that was open all year round. As Cao approached Mr. Li's front door, he became wary because there was a big man standing there, guarding the door for the casino. Despite his concerns, Cao gritted his teeth and approached him. He always looked down on Cao and had a hostile attitude whenever he saw Cao, because Cao craved to gamble while he even had no money. When he heard Cao said that he got rich, he didn't believe Cao because everyone knew Cao didn't have a job, his family was farmers, and he had no income at all. His predictions was correct, because Cao did not just come here to play cards, but rather to play cards with them. When Cao asked, "Isn't this a place where you make money?" he replied, "You are such a jerk. The pig that your mother worked so hard to raise, you even took it out as collateral." Nonetheless, he opened the door and let Cao in. Cao entered the room. The air smelled of cigarette smoke and the sound of gamblers arguing made the scene here very lively. When the people at the mahjong table saw Cao walk in, they all came to a halt, considering that Cao wasn't allowed to play because he didn't have any money. So, when they saw Cao, they all said empathically, "If you don't have money, get out as soon as possible, otherwise everyone here will teach you a lesson." Cao said he would bet with the family's fat pig. He was confident, his face was somewhat smug, and Cao sat down at the mahjong table. Xing was the man in charge of this bet. After hearing Cao, he immediately summoned Cao to another table to write a loan bill. Xing claimed that mortgaging the pig at home would allow him to borrow 1,000 won. That man did a lot of this kind of thing, and the loan bill was written quickly, urging Cao to sign it, then giving him 1,000 won. Cao signed and returned the bill to Xing. Xing glanced at it a few times, and when he saw no problems, he allowed Cao to come to the table and began gambling. They were playing mahjong, and it quickly became clear. The rules were simple. Everyone got 2 cards, and the winner was considered on the number of points they received. Cao lost a few games in a row and started to be nervous. Since his opponent Xing was constantly winning cards, Cao had no chance of knowing that the other 2 people at the table were also Xing's people. It would be strange if Cao won. After a few rounds, Cao's 1,000 won of selling his pig left him with only 400 won in his hand. The more he played, the more he lost. Cao continued to play until the afternoon, and the remaining 400 won were also lost. When Xing realized Cao had spent all of his money, he put his hand on Cao's shoulder and asked him to take his men home to catch the pig. Then it was the doorman's turn. Before leaving, Xing told him not to let Cao escape on the way. The guard nodded and pushed Cao out. He threatened Cao that if he tried to flee, he would cut off his legs and make him trudge home. "You deserve this because of being obsessed with the gambling," he said. When they arrived at the house gate, Cao refused to enter, instead telling them he would stand outside the gate and let them in to catch the pig. The doorman considered Cao's attitude and then agreed so as not to embarrass him. Cao looked at those men walking into the yard and quickly hid in the opposite corner. He didn't want to see his elderly mother sad. Hearing the screams of the doorman and the others in the yard, as well as his old mother's bitter pleas, he felt remorse and blamed himself. Finally, After witnessing those people beating the old mother and driving the pigs out, he couldn't return home and face the old mother again. Carl couldn't even remember how many times he vowed never to gamble again, but when he saw the blind old mother at home and thought about his behavior, he burst into tears. He dashed out of the village and came across a dilapidated house. He curled up in the wall's corner. It was getting dark by this time. Carl dozed off. Carl didn't know how long he'd been sleeping when he heard someone talking to him. A voice from behind a shattered wall asked him for fire to smoke. Carl dozed off. He didn't want to talk to that person. He said in a dream that he didn't smoke. Carl felt a chill as he turned to go back to sleep. The house was dilapidated and he was outside the village. It was late. How could anyone come here to lend him fire? Carl sensed that something was wrong when he heard voices outside the wall saying, "Let's go gambling." When these words were said, Carl suspected that this person was not normal. Before Carl could even raise his head to look, a figure appeared from beneath the crumbling wall. Carl was terrified when he looked at the man. The man's face was a large blood hole and he was getting close to Carl's face. Carl was so terrified that he peed his pants. His legs were weak. He wanted to run but couldn't get up. He could only sit on the ground panting for help, but couldn't speak. As the man stretched his head forward again, Carl noticed many sharp teeth emerging from the red hole on his face, which had no feature of a human face. He suggested gambling with Carl again. If Carl won, he would give him a large sum of money. If Carl lost, he would shave his face. A cold voice resounded, and Carl's heart was filled with fear. Carl was so terrified that he couldn't say no and could only nod his head in a cold sweat. When he saw Carl agree, he took out a few gold nuggets and placed them on the dirty wall, declaring that this was his bet. At the same time, he pulled out a mahjong set. After that, he placed a mahjong set on the filthy wall. Carl stared at the deck of cards in front of him, his heart racing, and he did not dare to reach out and take it for the first time. Following the drawing of the card, the man repeatedly urged Carl to draw the card quickly. Carl did not dare to resist, so he could only tremulously pull out his hand. Carl's body was shivering, holding two cards in his hand, but he didn't have the courage to look at them, so he just held them in his hand. The man appeared impatient, so he asked Carl to open the card. Despite his repeated urgings, Carl did not dare to open the cards and could only throw out two cards in his palm. When Carl closed his eyes and heard the man say that he got an earth card, he thought the game was over. He had never drawn a card larger than the ground card since he began playing this game. When Carl closed his eyes and covered his ears, he could hear the crunching sound of cards falling on the brick wall, similar to the sound of a life test. Immediately after Carl's card fell, he heard someone howl, "I really lost!" His words were filled with unbelievable tones, as if he couldn't lose. Carl reasoned that if his opponent lost a card, he would be ashamed to commit suicide, so he closed his eyes and waited for a long time, only hearing the wind whistling in his ears. Carl quietly opened his eyes, looked around and saw that the person had vanished. At this point, his heart seemed to be reviving. He thought he was having a dream, but when Carl turned around, he saw a deck of cards and some gold bars on the wall. Only then did he realize that the card he'd selected was the largest deck in mahjong, the Earth card. Carl couldn't hold back his tears as he realized God had saved his life and given him a second chance. Carl returned home with some gold nuggets. He never gambled again, sold the gold nuggets for startup capital, and Carl's family's life gradually improved.